today I have with me author Helene Stapinski, and her newest book is called Murder in Matera. I said that right,
Yeah.
Matera. And this book is so amazing, Helene. I love your writing, okay? You just
Thanks.
sucked, really, like you sucked me in from the first page, and I feel like I lived this with you. And the premise of the book is you go back and you research your family, and I always think about, I'm older, I'm 52 now, and I always think about that, like, why don't you tell me, like, how did you think about doing this? To, like, I'm going to go back, and I mean, you have to go further than I'd have to go. So
I mean, what happened was, my first book was about my family in New Jersey,
Mhm.
and it went back to basically about the turn of the century. And I had a lot of criminals in my family. So I had like a bookie uncle, I had a murderer grandfather, I had my great grandfather on the Russian side killed my great grandmother. I mean, it's just crazy stories. And so I'd already done research in the past, but there was this one story which took place in southern Italy, which was supposed to be the first family crime that we knew of, which was my great great grandparents in Basilicata, which is on the Arch of the Boot, killing someone, and then my great great grandmother escaping to America with her kids and leaving the great great grandfather behind. So that's all we knew, really. We really didn't know much more than that. And it was always kind of one of my favorite stories, I guess, in my family, and probably because I didn't know anything about it. The other stories I was able to find in the archives in Jersey City, where I grew up, like every story my mother had told me panned out. So, the bookie uncle stories, the murder from 1922 on the Russian side, it was all in newspaper archives and in also criminal archives. And it was pretty easy to find. When you're in America, you don't realize how easy it is to do research. So I thought, if I go back to Italy, it'd be fun. I could, go to the beach and eat some good food and gelato. I'll bring my mother with me and the kids. I figured it'll be like a vacation and I can find the story. But research in southern Italy is
Not
a
the
little
same.
different than America. And so it took 10 years, basically. And I'm very stubborn. That's one of the traits in my family. And I just wouldn't give up, basically. And I just kept going back. And I was angry, really, because I couldn't find it. And I was really determined to find it. And I did find it. So.
Well, I love the way you laid this book out, because it kind of builds on itself as you're finding stuff, and I'm so happy you documented it all, because like I said, now that we get older, well, my mom passed away like 5 years ago. My dad had died very young, but I realized, like, I didn't ask her stuff. She
Right.
died young. You don't know when they're, and there's, after she died, I was like, wait, I talk to her every day, but I didn't ask her stuff. Like, I didn't ask her the important questions.
I
It's
know, I felt the
weird.
same way with my dad. He died young. He was 59. And I don't know what he knew on the Polish side, but I wish I had had a conversation with him. I never even had a real conversation with him. I was like 20 something when he died, in my early 20s. And I just, at that age, you're not really having conversations with your parents,
Right.
talking to them, but you're not really talking to them. So
Right.
I feel the same way. There are other people in the family who passed who I wish were still around, who I could talk to, but you got to do what you can, when you can.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember I grew up with my grandmother, and she would start telling stories, and they were always the same ones that you got to the point where you're like, I know that story. But now then she dies. I'm like, I don't know that story.
I know. You take it for granted, and that's how it was with my mother. I mean, I'm the youngest in my family. I have an older brother and sister, and I think they were really sick of her stories. And so then she started telling me the stories. Obviously, I was much younger. I was like 7 years younger.
Hmm.
And again, she'd tell them over and over and over again. But I was the one who kind of wrote them down. And so
Right.
that's what that first book was, which of course led to this book. I feel like that book was kind of a launching pad for this book in a way. It helped me learn how to research and do stuff like that. But I think this is a better book in a lot of ways. It's got more of a narrative. It's got a real push to it, and it's a mystery, really. So.
Yeah, and to be able to solve that mystery.
Yeah, it's really gratifying. I mean, really gratifying. I mean, I can't tell. I just burst into tears when I found the criminal file. I don't want to give anything away, but
I know. It's very hard because I'm trying to talk around it, because
no, it's
I
hard.
want people to read this book. I really do, because it isn't, like I said, I left you a review on Amazon, and I was like, I felt like I was there with you, like when you had to go there, and I felt like I was right there, and as you were discovering stuff, I was like, yes, and then I was like cheering you on, and then I was like, bursting into tears when you burst into tears, and you made me really feel it, and that's why I was saying, like, as a writer, and of course you are a writer, you're a very accomplished writer, but it wasn't. Sometimes I read very accomplished writers and I can't get into it. Like your way of writing, I really got into the story, and it made me think about like my family. And I'm like, you know what? I don't know a lot, and maybe that's what you're here to show us is like, how, not murders, maybe, who knows, but there's always,
everybody's got a story.
Everybody's got a story. And our ancestors, getting over here, my ancestors were from England. They weren't from Italy, but I have no idea. I have no idea what they went through.
Most of the people who came here didn't come rich. The reason they left was because they had problems, whether it was financial or whatever, religious. And people just don't know. They don't know the story. And I didn't really know the story. I'd heard rumors, but I didn't know the whole story until I went there. And I had no idea what it was like in southern Italy at that time. No concept of how awful it was. You think of Italy and you think, oh, it's beautiful and, abundance of food and all. And it was not. It was a bad, bad place. And I think a lot of places were like that, at that time. And that's why they came here. And for you, it was probably earlier, right? Your family probably came in the 1700s maybe? Or
maybe parts of them, but I actually think my English, because I'm also German. My mom's side is Miller, so that's German. And so maybe they came earlier, but the English side, I really think they didn't. I think that it was in the 1900s, because I remember somebody saying, but what happened is my grandfather died before I was born, and my grandmother completely cut off from that side of the family. And he was one of 11. So it makes you think like, oh my God, I probably have relatives that live really close to here. And with Facebook and all that, you'd think it wouldn't even be, not just Facebook, but the internet and everything that, like you said, when you go to Italy and you try to find people, like here, we have it a little bit easier, I think, if you tried to find relatives.
And all that Ancestry.com stuff and all that stuff, that's really great stuff. You know what I mean?
I was wondering if you used that. That was actually one of my questions, is if you used Ancestry at all.
Yeah.
You did?
A little bit, yeah. I had originally done Ancestry, and then I had another cousin who had been using Family Tree. And so I switched over to Family Tree because they had already done genetic testing, that side of the family, that branch of the family. And so I didn't want to have them have to redo the testing. So we did testing and then found out we were related. And that's, I don't know if you remember in the book, there's the two sons that come over from Italy. There's Leonardo, who's my great-grandfather, and there's Valente, his brother. And so the family that we did the testing with is from Valente's line. And so we wanted to see if the male line from Valente's side matched the male line from Leonardo's side, which would mean they had the same dad. And so we did the testing.
Really?
And they had the same dad. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And it's crazy to just
that's
be...
That's not even in the book. I didn't even go there. But they were brothers. So.
Did you know him, Leonardo?
No, he died fairly young. I think he was in his late 40s when he died. So that was like, I guess he died, was it in the 20s or 30s? He was born, I'm trying to remember now. Yeah, it was a long time. My mother barely knew him. He died young. So
right.
We never met him. And really the stories came from that next generation, so it would have been his kids. So Beansy, my horrible grandfather, and his sister, and a couple of people from that line. That's where we got the information from. So.
And he was like, Leonardo was like on the up and up, though. He was a barber.
He was. Right. He was a good guy. And, he had a lot of bad kids. But so that's my thing. That what carried over from another generation was the genetic, bad gene thing, But I don't want to give it away. But
I know. Me too. And
anyway.
That's, what's interesting is that my dad died in 88. Mm-hmm. And he was not a well man. But anyway, one of the things he told me before he died was that his grandfather was not his real grandfather. And none of my cousins knew that. And I kind of passed that. And they were like, what? Like, they were all shocked by it. And they're like, but who is? And I was like, I don't know. We just don't know. And that, but when you're discovering, you feel like how you felt. Like, a part of you gets a little bit wholer, right? Like, when you were finding this information out, did you feel a little bit more complete in who you were?
Yeah, totally. it was filling in the gaps. You know what I mean? There
Yeah.
were these gaps, and it just sort of was kind of a huge relief because it kind of all made sense once I figured it all out. Once it all jigsawed together, it all sort of it made sense, and it made me make sense. And I think it makes your kids make sense, and
Yeah, and I think that people think like, why does it matter? Like I was telling my oldest son this story actually last night because he works.
Yeah, they don't care.
And I was like, oh my god, I get to interview this woman. This is crazy. Nah, nah. And I was starting to tell him, and he's like, but I don't really care. He's 30, okay? And I was thinking, yeah, you could go there, especially maybe that young. But I do find that as I get older, maybe it matters a little bit more to be able to pass on to my children too. And like now your children like have this book, their story's a little bit more complete. I don't know. I think it does. I think it does. It matters. I don't know.
I think it matters too.
You know?
My son has read this book, and he's 17, so he's a little bit older than my daughter. My daughter's 13, and she really has no interest. And it's there though. And someday she'll read it, and she'll know what the story is, because you do get to a point in your life where you want to know your story. And I think the thing that this book does, which you said earlier, is it shows people you can find your story. It is out there.
It is out there. It is. And okay, so the daughter that I was telling you about that I'm driving home from the airport, she happened to spend a month in Italy last year. She's my fourth daughter. I have 6 children. So
oh my goodness.
When I keep saying daughter, son, you'll get confused. But anyway, so she went with her boyfriend's family because he's part Italian, and they went and spent a month, and they just traveled around Italy. Well, as I'm listening to the end of the book, you're describing a meal, okay? And she's like, I want to go back to Italy. I miss their food so much. And I was like, is it really that different? And she was telling me about that she went to an olive grove and like saw olives being pressed and then had the olive. And she was like, Mom, you don't know.
Food really is amazing. And I didn't even go into all the meals. I mean, that first half of the book, when I'm not really finding anything, the first couple of trips, it was all about the food for me, because like that was my only relief. I wasn't finding any information. So every day I wound up having this huge lunch, and the book would have been like twice the size it is now if I had included all my meals. But they were amazing meals, and I have very detailed notes on all the meals I ate. I mean, everything was just fabulous. So.
And that's what I was thinking when I was reading. I'm like, how do you remember? Like, you went into very detailed explanation, like, and then they brought this, and then they brought this, and I was like, wow. And as you're describing it, she's like, that's exactly how it is. They just keep bringing food.
Yeah, you think you're done, and then another course comes. So I'm a reporter, so I take meticulous notes.
Yes, exactly. And that, she was just like, you just don't know. She's like, you walk away from there so full. And, she was of age last year when she went there. So she was, they went to wine tastings and, all that. And she wants to go back. So that, as soon as she got back here, she was like, I'm planning my next trip to Italy. And I'm like, don't you want to see something else? She's like, no, I don't want to see anything else.
I've been all over the world. I really have. I recount that towards the end of the book, having traveled all over the place. And Italy, it's the place. It's sort of like, it's the best place to go. So, the people do experience it, do go back and back and back, and I'm going back in September. So.
Are you going back? And, she said, she's my, person, she's always like exercising and dieting. And when she got there, she was like, there's no diet here. I'm just going to eat till I'm.
Yeah. You got to walk around a lot, and hopefully, you work some of it off. So.
Yeah. And she did think you were describing in the book this one part where you're driving stick. And and you're in a mountain area, and they had, of course, it was her boyfriend's family, but the dad was driving, and she said she thought she was going to die. She's like, I was on the cliff of a mountain, and he's driving, like, it's puttering along, and she's like, you could actually look down. She's like, I was like, okay, I'm dead. There's no way we're getting off this mountain.
Absolutely. Yeah, just everyday driving was insane. I'd go to Pastici, which was one of the towns that my family lived in, and the hills are insane, and I'm trying to drive this stick shift, and I'm rolling backwards, and, the streets are so narrow. They're all like hairpin turns, and it's a miracle that I didn't, have at least one accident, which
I know, because
is,
we're I mean, and you live in
yeah,
New York and I'm here, and we have windy roads, but I mean, nothing,
yeah.
and there's always fences and, gates and everything. And she's like, no, they don't have that, Mom.
These places were built long before cars, they were donkeys, so
They're
that's what
donkeys.
she's made for. They're
Ex-
not made for cars. So.
Exactly. So, so you're going to go back, and are you going to go to the same place? Are you going to travel around?
I'm actually going to the same place because everybody there is very excited about the book, and so they wanted me to come and visit and have a little celebration. So I'm gonna, and I need a vacation, so I'm going
Well, I
back.
went on Amazon. I mean, this book is getting, especially for it's been out in less than a month. Your
Right.
reviews are amazing. I mean, they're just off the charts from what I've seen for people who write new books. I mean, that must be so exciting for you as a writer.
It is so exciting because it's also been a long time coming. You know what I mean? So this book has been in the works for such a long time. And when I was recording the audiobook, I was near the end. I was the part where I'm in Naples, and I'm having that realization, and I just broke down crying. Not just because of Vita's story, which is really poignant, but that it was done. I actually wrote this book. It's finished. It's coming out. Like it was, I still couldn't believe it. You know what I mean? I just burst into tears and I had to stop the recording and I had to take a break for like 15 minutes because I just kept crying. So it's been a really emotional release for me. I've written 2 other books before and they were, emotional as well, but nowhere near what this is like. It just took up such a big part of my life and it's so close to my heart in a lot of ways. And, um, so it's so gratifying to get the good feedback. I mean, I'm getting emails every day from people all over the world, not just here or the country, like all over the world, saying that somebody found a copy in Rome in a bookstore, some used bookstore. I mean, it's crazy. It's like all over the place, um, and it's just so exciting and so gratifying, to to have it out there and to have people enjoying it. So.
I am so like, I read a lot of books, and when I find a book like this, I get so happy. I'm like, oh my God, I am so blessed that I found your book, and I was able to read it, and because it changed me. It really did. Like I told you before, I feel like today I need some chill.
I hear you. It's great to find a book that you love. I mean, it's hard. I read a lot of books as well. And a lot of books start out okay, and then they kind of take a plummet, or they're really slow in the beginning, and then they get better. But, to find something that you really like from the beginning to the end is a real treat, I know. So thank you for that.
Oh, and, it really was. And I dare to ask you, like, what are you going to do next?
Oh, no. I have a couple of ideas in mind. I lived in Alaska when I was in my 20s.
I saw that.
At a radio station in Alaska, in Nome. And my practice book, my manuscript, was my thesis for Columbia, for my MFA program. So the year that I spent there, I actually wrote about, but never published. So I'm thinking of reworking that maybe because it's great material, but it would have to be totally redone, I have to start from scratch, but with that, clay of that original manuscript. Is that, and also just going back to Italy again. My husband thinks I should do something on prima nocte, on that rite of, the first night of marriage, do research into that. And, that's such a horrible topic and so fraught with all kinds of drama. So who knows? We'll see. Right now I'm dealing with interviews.
Yes, exactly. Doing all your promotion work. But, that's what I want to tell everybody about why to read. It's not just about your family story. I learned so much. I've never been to Italy. There are customs, there are things, which is really funny. I've had 2 sons graduate from a Catholic high school. I am not Catholic, okay? But it was a really good school. It fit their needs, okay, which is why I sent them. But they've told me so much about, because they've had to learn from the classes they've taken a lot about Catholicism and a lot about, so through them and then reading this, like there's, centuries and centuries. I mean, Rome has been around. I mean, Italy has been around a long time. But it's neat to find out some of those traditions. And I was kind of sharing it with them. And, they'd say, oh, yeah, that's this. And, yeah, we learned about that. And, the way you wrote about it, I was like so excited to learn stuff like about that, a lot of people came from there, like we only know our ancestors from England and Germany, but basically everybody came from somewhere over there, like, in Italy and that area. So those traditions are just, they're crazy to learn. I loved it.
I know, and I tried to tell it in a way that it wasn't like I was never a big fan of history when I was a kid because I felt like it was always shoved down my throat
Right.
and it was really hard to digest, and I just wasn't interested. And so when I do include history in a book, I try and make it accessible, so you can experience it with whatever else is happening, at the time. So I'm telling you the story, and you're with me, and so I'm telling you what happened there, rather than just take you from this place and try and thrust you back any context, So it's like what's the Mary Poppins? A spoonful of sugar. So
yes,
exactly.
Because
I can tell it that way. So
yeah, and the way you went back and forth, that was another thing I just thought of, is like when you were describing in kind of a first person way of what she was going through. I love that because I know a lot of it you had the research as to what happened, but you were also imagining like that from what you can, from what you've discovered about like what was going on in that time. I knew that it wasn't that she wrote it down like I did this or ate this or but you got to figure a lot of that out by being there and hearing stories, and I love that part of it because it put another depth into it.
Right. I made that choice to sort of go there and sort of not to absolutely fictionalize it, but to kind of take a leap in a few places because I really did want it to be real. And there was enough historical context and enough research that I could sort of booster it and kind of show you what was happening then, because people then didn't live that different lives from one another. You know what I mean? So what happened to one person in that town through their whole life was pretty much what happened to their next door neighbor, unless you're involved in a murder, But what they ate and what it was like and how they worked, it wasn't some crazy different job from somebody else. Everybody was a farmer. Everybody walked the several miles to the farm. Everybody ate polenta in the morning. It's basically there. It's not, so that's not made up. You know what I mean? That's all real. And so I tried to, put in what I knew with that historical background to create the reality of what was going on in her life.
Yeah.
So.
That part was amazing. And when you were saying about how our children, like history is always, whatever, they're like whatever. But my daughter, so she's going to be 22 this month, and so she's forced to listen to your book because I'm listening to it. And it was the part about her coming over, and when you were describing the living, she was like, "What?" She's like, "Why did they do that?" I'm like, "What do you mean why? Like they had, that's what was going on." And she's like, "Oh my God, like why did, like weren't there rules? Like weren't there?" I was like,
no.
That is what, but I didn't even know, like, of course we know it wasn't good, but you describing it and putting me in that boat like that, I was like, wow.
And that's all real. That's real. That's like from the congressional report from that time period. And that's documented, like what those ships were like. So I was shocked myself. I mean, I knew it was bad, but when I read the detailed reports, I was like, oh my God. Like, and then the part about leaving Naples as well, like nobody ever talks about that side of it. Like you hear like when people get to Ellis Island, everybody knows that story, The Godfather or whatever. Yes. Many books have talked about it, but you don't hear that coming over from that end, and that was a real drag too, The ship itself is the worst, I think.
I know, and I try to imagine like when they got off on Ellis Island, like what, and they had to find the person, there's all these people, they got to find a relative, they probably don't even know who the relative is, like they've never seen them before, and and then, and start over, and that's when I could hear in your voice on the audio, that's okay. Like how, how much respect you had for her. We're moms. We have never had to do something like that, what she had to go through and really take that leap of faith to come here and say, I'm going to give them a good life and I'm going to start over. And, we can't even.
Yeah, they really were heroines, the moms just never get the credit, You get a lot of the guys came over earlier and then brought the families over, but some of the moms came themselves, and to make that trip, I mean, that's just a real, it's a leap,
I'm trying to think, what did she do when she got here? I'm trying to remember if you said
I mean, she was a weaver back in Italy and like a seamstress, so she might have done that, but there's no evidence of it. It doesn't say. It's just, I think in the census, it just said she was, a housewife or whatever. She was living with the son, so.
Right. Yeah, especially because in those years, the garment industry in New York, I mean, that was huge, and so I could imagine she could, but Who knows?
She probably did work. I mean, they weren't obviously were not rich when they came over, so she probably worked when she got here. I would think as a seamstress, that was what the training was. So because there are no farms in Jersey City, so.
That's right. Well, thank you so much, Helene. This is I can't even say enough about this book. Go get this book and read it. It is so much fun. You will love it, and I love the fact that you did the audio. Thank you so much. I love when authors do their own audios. I know some don't like to.
Encouraged, but I felt like it was too personal a story, and they had given me some examples of people who could do it, and I was like, no, I'm doing it.
For me, like I told you, I went back and forth, but I found out I started listening to you more because I could hear your heart in it, and I can always tell when it's the author. I really can. There's some kind of like emotional connectedness to the story, and I'm really happy that you did it. It was amazing, and you did an amazing job. So anyway. Yeah, and please let me know, like, whatever you do in the future, I want to know about it. Please put it out there. I want to find it,
Okay, good.
and have fun in Italy, and,
You gotta go.
have a great time. Thank you so much. Seriously, thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you for the interview. You're great.